This lesson is about musical instruments and what the names are in Dutch. Hallo lieve vrienden. So, an instrument in Dutch is een instrument. And we also say muziekinstrument. And if you go to lessons, that is what we call muziekles. Ik ga naar muziekles means I'm going to music lessons. So there are so many types of instruments, right, that you can play. So let's go by them by category, and I'll name only the most common ones that are most familiar to everyone. So let's start with the string instruments. That is what we call snaarinstrumenten. So snaar, that is a string, right? So a guitar has 6 strings, een gitaar heeft 6 snaren. So that's the first one already. Gitaar. You can pronounce it in so many ways because it has a G and it has an R, right? And I have lessons about those sounds. So I can say gitaar, I can say gitaar, right? And combinations of that. The plural of that is gitaren. I have 2 guitars. Ik heb 2 gitaren. And if I am a guitar player, then we add ist to the word. So I am a guitar player is ik ben een gitarist. And that goes for almost all musical instruments. If you are the player, add ist to the instrument and then you have the word, right? So if you play bass guitar, that is basgitaar. Ik ben een basgitarist. You can also say basgitaarspeler, bass guitar player, but the common way is adding the ist. And the pick that you can use to play a guitar is what we call plectrum, right? So I like to use the pick when I play guitar. Ik gebruik graag een plectrum wanneer ik gitaar speel. Another type of string instrument is viool, that is violin, and cello, we use the Italian pronunciation for that, and contrabass. So, and the bow that they use for those instruments is what we call strijkstok. I play violin with a bow. Ik speel viool met een strijkstok. Then let's go to the wind instruments. That is what we call blaasinstrumenten, because blazen means blowing. The section that plays these type of instruments is what we call blazers. Where are the wind instrument players? Waar zijn de blazers? So which types do we know? Trompet, that is the first one. Saxophone. So we use the F for the F sound, which is pretty straightforward, isn't it? But the English often use PH as the F sound, right? But we just use the F. Then we have trombone. That is the pronunciation of that. And we have tuba. We don't say tuba, we say tuba because the U sound is what belongs to that letter U. And for each of these instruments, just add ist to the instrument and then you have the player. Ik ben een trompetist. Notice the double T. Ik ben een saxofonist. Ik ben een trombonist. En ik ben een tubist. So I leave out the A. Then harmonica, that you play with your mouth, is what we call mondharmonica. And there's also a type of flute that you play like this. That is a transverse flute, right, in English. And in Dutch, we call that dwarsfluit. So the word dwars means at a 90-degree angle, usually. And that is the English word thwarted or transversal, right? So that is dwarsfluit. And then we have another type of flute that when I was in school, we all had to learn to play that. In English, I don't understand that word. It is a recorder type of flute, right? But in Dutch, we call it blokfluit, and that is made out of wood or plastic. I can still play some of that as well. Then we go to the key instruments, toetsinstrumenten, right? So, of course, we have the piano, that is piano, just the Dutch pronunciation for that. And if you are playing a piano, you are pianist. ik ben een pianist. And if you have an electronic device like a piano, that is what we call keyboard. So that is kind of funny, right? Because that is an English word, but if you would say in Dutch, ik speel keyboard, you mean that you don't play a piano, but you play like the instrument similar to synthesizer. That's also a word, of course. Synthesizer, we don't have a Dutch word for that, so that is the instrument. And also a key instrument is accordeon, right? So you play with both hands. With one, you are pumping air into the instrument, and with the other, you play the keys. So those are some common key instruments. Then finally, we have percussion instruments. That is what we call slaginstrumenten. So slag is derived from the word slaan, right? That is hitting. And if you would play the game of baseball and you are at the bat, then you would say, ik ben aan slag. That is what the word comes from. Slag is from slaan. So if you play the drums, you would say, ik speel drums. And if you are a drums player, you are called drummer. So this is an example where you don't put ist at the end of the word to make it the player. So that's an exception. The drum kit that a drummer plays on is what we call drumstel. So I have a really large drum kit. Ik heb een heel groot drumstel. And the article for that is het. That's why I say groot drumstel and not grote drumstel. By the way, cymbals that you use on a drum kit is what we call in Dutch bekkens, right? And that's also a body part, by the way, but also the cymbals are called that. And of course, you use for most of these percussion instruments, you use sticks, right? So in Dutch, that is stokjes. So I'm looking for my drumsticks. Ik zoek mijn drumstokjes. And then, of course, you have a lot of instruments like percussion instruments that carry the original name that are not Dutch. So you have congas, you have timbales, you have bongos, right? We don't have a Dutch word for it. So that is just the word we use. And to name the player of these types of instruments, you just add the word speler. So I'm a conga player, ik ben een conga speler. And sometimes we just use the original Hispanic word for that, conguero or timbalero, right? So you hear that as well, especially in those bands where they use this type of instrument, because often when you use this type of instrument, you also sing in those languages, right? So it's very common to just use those words instead of Dutch words. Did I leave some instruments out? Of course, I left many out. But if you know some additional words, Dutch words for instruments, please let me know in the comments and share with us all. And I'm happy to respond. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next lesson.